Hello, everybody. Welcome to Voice Theater's acting class presentation of COVID Pages. I'm Shauna Cantor, Artistic Director of Voice Theater. A couple of months ago, I asked the actors in the Voice Theater acting class if they would write their own stories about how they had been experiencing the COVID-19 crisis. This evening, 8 women will share with you their original stories of this time in their lives. And tonight, we are supporting the Homeless Coalition of New York City. Your donation can really make a difference to homeless women. To donate to the Homeless Coalition of New York City, go to the email invitation you received and click the donate link, or you can go to voicetheater.org and then click support us. Your donation will help homeless women. I hope this evening's original pieces inspires and nourishes you. And now I would like to invite Susanna Kellner to share her story.
When we first started to learn about COVID-19, we were going about our ordinary New York City, Chelsea neighborhood lives. At first, nothing was changing, but friends would try to sit a little further apart, and no one wanted to touch door handles or push elevator buttons. People were told not to touch the face and to wash hands. We witnessed a woman in a coffee shop bragging about not touching her face while simultaneously touching her face. It felt like it should be a drinking game. By the second week in March, life became a series of grocery lists, preparations for shelter in place. The day before they closed my children's school on March 13th, there was a line out the door and around the block of Trader Joe's. Whole Foods sold out of fresh food, never mind beans, rice, and pasta. We did not know what to expect. I bought 4 bags of coffee, just the essentials for us. We believed the mayor might at any moment close the bridges and tunnels and seal the city. We did not know if it would turn into a massive lockdown where all of a sudden one would have to feed a family of 4 and a dog for a month with the provisions currently in the apartment. As I tried to assemble food, I witnessed my art dealer bachelor neighbor teetering into the building's lobby with a massive white bag containing a PlayStation 4 and 2 massive Korean noodle soups. He was ready for what was ever coming his way, and he was going to enjoy this sheltering in place. We packed our shelter in place provisions for Woodstock. We stopped ordering takeout, and the idea of sushi or salad seemed crazy and dangerous. We thought that if it were not piping hot, the virus could be all over the food. Our 15-year-old daughter wished us to leave her in the city. She did not feel any danger and loves the city and wanted to stay by herself. This was not possible by any stretch. She thought she would just go to Whole Foods around the corner and feed herself. The only thing we packed that interested her was when we decided we needed to take the plastic shoebox of 25 nail polishes into quarantine. We could no longer go to the nail salon, so instead we made our own. Masks were not required, but I found myself wrapping my face in a thick knitted silk scarf and using it to cover my face on the street and in tight situations, and using disposable gloves on the street. We stopped taking the subway. We started walking everywhere. It was truly bizarre. Hand sanitizer, which I'd previously mocked, became an addiction, our holy water. Can I have a spritz? Walking the dog became a series of scary incidents with the repetitions of times one was going in and out of the apartment, using the elevator again, the door handle, close spaces in the hallway, and repeat in 3 hours. When we finally came upstate, we huddled around our fireplace. Our home became a fortress. Shopping for food still seemed like a search and capture mission. I would go to the grocery store and hope that the food that I wanted to cook was there. Often the store was out of the necessary ingredients for the dish I decided to make. I would come upon the area of the supermarket and it would be barren. I felt like the necessary precautions of a mask and gloves made shopping so scary, I could not even think, is this a balanced meal? Did I find any frozen vegetables? Captain Crunch and after dinner delight. Twizzlers, ramen, ice cream. Yes, of course, these things make my family smile. No flour, yeast, eggs, butter, or sugar. Everyone was baking like crazy. Cookies made us momentarily happy. I think my favorite COVID moment was in Home Depot on Route 17 near Paramus, New Jersey. I went in fully gloved and masked to pick up a few pre-ordered items at the customer service station. While I was waiting in a mask and gloves, I noticed a man with trim boards on his cart. Are those your socially distancing sticks? I asked him. Without missing a beat, he started dancing with his cart while approaching others in the store and saying they were not socially distanced enough. I could not wait to get back in my car to tell my daughter and use some hand sanitizer. I wonder still if he was a real life comedian or if I was looking for humor in extraordinary places. Time went on and our kids kept doing school online. Everyone in my family was busy on Zoom calls except for me. I convinced a friend to teach an online acting class. She also staged a Zoom reading of Our Town. We watched the beautiful Paris Ballet dance all over their homes in quarantine. These things highlight the part of my heart, which is typically filled by the arts. COVID-19 made it nearly empty. Some good things happened during COVID. I used up a vat of multivitamins that we never take here in the country. We had the same container of vitamins from our first trip to Target when we bought the house 11 years ago. I knitted a beautiful red chunky sweater. I grew my garden from seeds. It was easier because I was here to watch the garden grow instead of the flyby weekend visit. I baked many cookies and lots of sourdough bread. I made my own sourdough starter. I unpacked my boxes of my childhood possessions, photos, yearbooks, and coin collections. I cleaned closets. I wrote love letters. I made a Corona Hits playlist on Spotify. When I played it recently, a friend, she too found humor in it. I read the news and would occasionally go on missions to the city to reclaim school books and clothes as the seasons changed. It is hard to finish projects during COVID. I wish I had kept a log of all the meals that I've cooked and all the laundry I've done. In May, after the last snow, real non-Zoom life began again on the tennis court. While on court, one feels normal, and maskless, one can hit the ball with a lot of force. We have started taking family tennis lessons. It is a lot of fun and gives everyone a sense of being outside and being athletic. It makes us feel better. I play now in several weekly games at the club, and this feels normal and social and good. I hope that you and the ones you love weather the pandemic safely and hope sometime to hear the funny stories of how you went into quarantine. I'm trying to see the strength that it has created in my family and the opportunity to explore interests, even via Zoom, that I've let lapse for 33 years.
I finally saw my little brother on Wednesday, June 10th, Portugal Day. I don't quite remember what Portugal Day commemorates. Portugal's national poet Luís de Camões and his epic The Lusíads? Portugal's former glories in the Age of Discoveries? Both? Neither? He appeared in the garage, which I'd opened so that he could choose what old furniture he wanted for his new apartment. And I noticed for the first time his stoop. All 6'1" of him, inherited from no one apparently in our short family, beginning to curl like a question. Is it okay to hug, or are you doing the COVID thing? He asked. I haven't seen anyone for months except through screens, and was on a 5-second delay. COVID, I said finally, and reached out my right foot for him to tap hello. but he looked confused, like he had just landed on Earth for the first time and didn't know what to do. So I tapped his foot awkwardly, not at all like I used to when we were kids and her mother tried to serve dinner, talk on the phone, and get ready for night school all at the same time. The story goes that he, 3 years younger than me, was supposed to be named Jaime, after our father. But since our father never talked to our mother except to ask if dinner was ready, a comida está pronta, eu quero comer. And since he only saw his new son for the first time 3 days after his birth, picking up mother and baby at the hospital to go home, my mother named him Luigi, after no one we knew. My father was furious and nearly tore her ear off in a rage. Of course, now old Luigi de Camões, which Americans usually pronounce Camoens or something, it's just a blind old white guy who co-opted other cultures. Luigi N, Neves, which Americans pronounce Neves, from the beginning couldn't care less about our cultural heritage. From boyhood on, he rejected my Portuguese immigrant parents' food, language, rules. He'd chew our mother's typical Friday night dinner of codfish for hours until it was just a ball of resistance lodged in his cheek. That one of his daughters now does the same out of anxiety is beside the point. He bristled at her mother's attempts to discipline when our father disappeared for good into his long, longshoreman shifts at Port Newark and the bottle, and came up with new challenges that replaced the codfish chewing marathons. Luigi fought off our mother's insistence that we speak Portuguese at home and preserve what little remained of her and our father's poor, rural, under a dictatorship upbringing. Surely, what legacy of her unrealized dreams could possibly remain in first-generation American children? Luigi refused to pay attention in the Portuguese school she sent us to for several years, from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. every day, killing any chance for us to participate in American after-school sports or clubs. That later his inattention was discovered to be generic ADD is beside the point. While I no longer remember the finer details of our epic childhood, I do remember my brother's resistance by the broken Portuguese he mastered to match our parents' and grandparents' broken English. I remember his refusal to become right-handed when our mother and his teachers tried to shame his natural left-handedness out of him. Meanwhile, I took to Portuguese like a duck to water so that they wouldn't detect my own natural queerness. No wonder he started going by Lou. The landline in my phone, I keep it because I'm sentimental, still rings often. Though for the first month of the pandemic, it was blissfully silent. It's always either calls from AARP, Medicare, the cancer foundation my mother got treatment from, someone with an Indian accent asking for her social security number, or bill collectors and creditors, human or bot, asking to speak to Louise. Legend has it, on a journey from the Portuguese colonies of Goa in India to Macau in China, Luigi D was shipwrecked and lost everything, including his Chinese lover, but managed to save his manuscript of the Lusiads by holding it aloft, with his right arm, no doubt, and swimming with his other arm to shore. You gotta wonder about priorities here, right? I wonder what my brother has held aloft besides the bottles and cans, brews different from my father's, he's been quick to point out, and who or what else went down burning or sailed on without him. When he and I meet on Portugal Day, it is by the calendar the first time since a requisite Christmas gathering. By other measures, the first time in decades. And I can see, silhouetted in the garage doorway, almost a poem. Maybe it's the blank look of detox. Resistance has ebbed, withdrawn its lifetime insistence, and left a body washed on shore, here, the house in which we grew up, and through the finer points of inheritance that I now live in, again. Deep lines etch orbits of eyes that are our mother's shape and our father's coloring, marking sunburned whiskers at the edge of grayed whiskers. They are routes to every new world ever promised, traced over and over on Renaissance parchment.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I have to say that it's strange that COVID has stalled the primaries in New York, more particularly. In March, my dad called me to vote in the primaries. This was prior to the first COVID-19 stall. I was prepared. This meant a lot to me. I held a lot of secrecy and shame for my past behavior when I began voting at the age of 18. My dad, a full-on Democrat. I grew up with JFK pictures on the wall, went to a Roman Catholic church that supposedly JFK attended in Virginia, where we lived near McLean. He had button collections of donkeys, and I still remember how small and blue and red they were, and the big John Kennedy smile, sort of like my dad's, and the haircut. However, when I began voting as an 18-year-old, my parents had already divorced. So I voted Republican in rebellion. I naively thought that the Republican Party was more powerful and had more pull than the Democrats. Democrats were weak. Those were the Dukakis days. I felt bad that I kept that secret from my dad. He taught me so much about educating myself and being educated. I voted dumbass until Obama came into the picture. I hoped for Hillary, but I suppose times were not progressive enough for a woman. Before I hung up the phone with my dad, I confessed that in the past I voted Republican. And the first thing that he asked me as damage control was I registered as a Democrat. Relieved, I said yes. Like getting ready for your own wedding. I had it on my iPhone calendar. I looked up where the voting was going to take place. I had made sure of the time. I placed a reminder a day before to remind me I was not missing this one. And I was going to redeem myself for all the years before. So when they scheduled the primaries on me, I was deflated in the way that my soul was compromised. I was finally getting married, and my wedding has been rescheduled because of the rain. Or in this case, COVID-19. I heard that they were going to allow mail-in votes. How will I remember to mail in my vote and when? Where are the guidelines? It takes me 2 weeks to finally mail something out. I do email, not snail mail anymore. I realize a mailbox is only a few steps away, but come on. I'll have to track down a stamp. And even worse, I have to go buy one. March 28th, 2020. The New York primaries get postponed to June 23rd. Did you vote? Did I forget to vote? Wait, no. I don't remember getting mail. I hardly check my mail because I left my key in the car that I sold. So I have to wait for my fiance to check the mail. I think I placed it aside somewhere. I knew that was going to happen. I am ready to go in and place my vote when the time comes. If the time comes. Why is it so complicated?
These days of COVID have had me ricocheting between the past and the future, with moments of luxuriating in the present. At the start, I was sent back to when I was 11, and my mom, 48 years old with no pre-existing conditions, became very ill after having recovered from the flu, which I don't think I even knew she had had. She had accompanied my dad into a hospital in Baltimore that Saturday, where he had a cyst on his back removed. On the way in, because she wasn't feeling well, they stopped at her doctor on the way to the hospital. And the doctor told her it was nothing serious and sent her off with some antibiotics. When they returned from the hospital, she was so weak that she lay down on the sofa. She spent Sunday in bed. I had never seen my mom sick before. On Monday morning, I awoke with a clear image in my mind that if I went to school, I would get called down to the principal's office, where there would be two adults standing behind a desk, both of them looking down at the desk, unable to look at me. And finally, one would tell me that my mother had died. So I refused to go to school that day or any day until my mom got better. I spent the day at home with my mom, who over the course of the day ceased to recognize me. As I sat on the edge of her bed, I began to cry, and she asked, "Who's that crying on my hand?" By the time my dad got home from work, I was downstairs on the phone begging my friend to come over. My friend said my mom had a cold and would be just fine, sort of like what the doctor had told her on Saturday on the way into the hospital with my dad. Nothing serious. Then I heard a loud crash. My mom had collapsed as my dad was helping her back from the bathroom. I ran upstairs, and there she was on the hallway floor, lying face up, completely unresponsive, her eyes open, staring straight ahead. And then she was gone, taken away in an ambulance. That was the last I saw her. She was dead by the time she arrived at the hospital. So, when the COVID thing started, and people said it was no worse than the flu and shrugged it off and minimized it, I was furious. I was 11 again, and hearing an alarm that none of the adults in power were heeding. And COVID was clearly worse than the flu. Well, as time went on, and we went into staying home, and we realized we would not be going to Portugal in the spring as we had planned, I started living more in the present. Waves of gratitude alternated with periods of anxiety. Was the pain in my chest COVID, or was it anxiety? And then there was the matter of my husband, who came up from our place in Brooklyn and then wanted to go back. I told him if he did, he'd have to stay there. And so he stayed here in Woodstock. Oh, and the face coverings. In the health food store, I suggested to two adults who were in line behind me joking around with the kid who was with them and who was hopping around, that it'd be really nice if they wore face coverings. The woman shouted, "He's autistic and he's a kid." I told her that they weren't, that they were adults, to which she replied, "This is America and we can do whatever we want." "Yeah," I said, "Trump's America." And that I was 70 fucking years old and I didn't want to get sick. A little lie is I didn't turn 70 until June. And then, as it was my turn at the cashier, I turned to her and told her that the kid really was cute. And at the cashier, I told the cashier that face covering should be required, and it was especially not fair to the people who work there that they weren't. The next time my husband went to that store, face coverings were required. Small victory. And time passed, and I meditated and ate well and healthfully and felt immense gratitude and lost weight slowly and wondered what would happen in November. And then a man, George Floyd, was murdered by police in Minneapolis, and the whole world tilted on its axis again. People took to the streets. Peaceful protesters were infiltrated by agitators and looters. Some police reacted with violence. Others marched with the protesters. The president called for military intervention on our soil. Again, I was thrust back to the past, to 50 years earlier when 4 Kent State students were shot dead by National Guard members in Ohio as they protested the US expansion of the Vietnam War into Cambodia. And to earlier days, when peacefully protesting in DC, I saw weathermen whose violent tendencies chilled me. It was then I committed to pursuing a career in law to change the system from within the system, to help bring about social and economic justice. Now, I wondered, what would the agitators and looters lead to a backlash and to a replay of the 1972 election when Nixon got reelected? Would it lead to Trump's getting reelected? Things continued to worsen. People were still out of work with no end to it in sight. And what about the law that I thought would promote fairness and justice if I worked within the system? What of that? Trump thumbed his nose at it, commuting the sentence of his friend, Roger Stone, a political operative convicted of 7 felonies related to the 2016 election. Even Trump's enabler, Attorney General Barr, called it a righteous prosecution. Trump wished another old friend, a woman charged with being a sexual predator and helping a sex trafficker, well. He had peaceful protesters tear gassed so he could march across the park for a photo op of him in front of a church holding up a Bible as a prop. He sent law enforcement officials to Portland and Seattle against the wishes of local elected officials. It only made matters worse. Then he threatened to send federal troops to other cities, all led by Democrats. I feared what he would do in November. And still, there were those who prided themselves on not wearing masks, no doubt because their leader refused to wear one. A friend from high school referred to the people who checked for face coverings in her local store as Nazis and declared herself part of the resistance for boldly going in there without one. Her reasoning: the rioters and looters didn't wear masks, so why should she? Her Facebook commenters agreed with her. I despaired at this. And it got worse. The anti-mask contingent surged, spouting conspiracy theories. The virus was a hoax. Wearing a mask impinged on their freedom and jeopardized their health, by causing wearers to rebreathe that old carbon dioxide. No matter that surgical teams wore masks day in and day out in hour upon hour long surgeries without ill effect. no matter that asymptomatic people could spread the virus, and that if we all wore a mask, we would reduce the spread and the virus would virtually disappear, allowing the economy to recover. But no, those people crowded, maskless, into bars, parties, and beaches, and COVID surged wherever they went. And then some fights between businesses trying to enforce the mask mandate and customers refusing to comply with them got so violent that people ended up being killed. What the hell? I continue to be at war with the non-face covering wearing set. How hard is it really to wear one? I continue to fear for our country, for the sick, for those who are dying alone, for the isolated, for those out of work, for those facing evictions or foreclosures, for the workers faced with getting sick. I suppose I could have calmed myself down by not following what's going on. But that would sort of be like saying COVID would disappear if we just stopped testing for it. The days flipped by. Finally, I realized I was missing my life by spending way too much time watching and reading the news and following social media. With my husband away, I turned off the TV and pulled up our airbed to the wall of windows and fell asleep to the grating of cicadas in the damp night air. I awakened to the sun rising over the mountains and gazing up at the whisk of clouds going by and the treetops, felt immense calm and much appreciation for all my blessings. So, I will follow what's going on. I will, however, devote more time to the things that bring me joy and over which I have some control. Volunteering, working in our garden, just sitting outside and taking in the sights and sounds and scents of nature, and savoring time with my husband and our dog. And I will remind myself over and over and over of this. Do your own work, then step back. The only path to serenity. Oh, and wear a fucking mask. And vote.
It was March 12th, and I'm sitting at my desk at work, getting antsy because all I can do is read in the news about how New York City is quickly rising in cases of COVID, and wondering if any slight scratch in my throat could be coronavirus or just my anxiety. Our entire floor at work is anxious because there has been no mention so far of our offices closing. We leave for work that night, taking with us any precious belongings and our computers, thinking we may be asked to work from home for the next couple of weeks. Little did I know, that would be the last time I would go into the office and work at my little cubicle. We get an email that night that our offices were to close indefinitely until it is safe to return. At first, they said a couple of weeks, which got extended to a month, which got extended to 2 months, so on and so forth. I got used to working from home after a few weeks and even ordered myself a desk and monitor because my back couldn't take working on the couch and kitchen table any longer. I was in desperate need of a massage or a chiropractor, but of course, everything self-care was shut down, so that wasn't an option. After about a month or so, things started to get a little more stressful. Let's just say fashion, like many others, is not the best industry to work in during a pandemic. But I specifically worked in athleisure, so our business was actually booming because all people wanted to buy at the time were leggings, sweatpants, and loungewear. Many of my friends, however, were getting furloughed, so there was still this major uncertainty in the industry. Then, about a month and a half into quarantine, we get the email. I jump out of the shower around 8:30 a.m. and grab my phone. There's an email from our CEO to the entire company. And this can't be good. It read that they have held on for as long as they could, but unfortunately need to make some tough decisions and furlough/lay off some departments, and that we would be contacted by our boss by the end of the day if we were impacted. I let out a big sigh, sat down on the couch, and tell my boyfriend that it's a waiting game now. I can hardly eat breakfast because I'm so anxiously waiting for a call. I felt like I could hear the Jeopardy waiting theme song playing in the background of my mind. About 2 hours later, which felt like an eternity, I get a call from my boss. My stomach drops and I pick up. She tells me a whole spiel about how the decision is not a reflection of my performance, blah, 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 but my entire department's last day is June 30th. I wasn't sure how to feel at first. I wasn't shocked, and I didn't feel too sad either, but it's definitely not news you ever want to hear. I don't know what I felt, but I don't think the information had sunk in at the time. I've been running a side passion for a while working at my job, a business that I planned to launch relatively soon at the time. And I couldn't help thinking, was this a sign? Was this the push that I needed to leave my day job and pursue my side passion / figure out what I really wanted to do with my life? All I know is the universe works in mysterious ways, and I truly believe everything happens for a reason. So I'm riding the wave and following my gut to see where the universe is going to guide me next.
Oh, February 11th. Cold winter morning. Home from my daily tennis match. Cup of coffee, comfy couch. I stretch out my left leg. Ow, ow, oh my God. Searing pain, snap. What the hell was that? Oh, I can't move. Oh, I'm home alone. Ambulance, X-ray, MRI, diagnosis, not good. Crutches, no walking, no driving, stuck at home. 4 long weeks later. Wuhan? Where's that? China? Okay. New virus? No big deal. That's so far away. Uh-oh. Something's coming. It's coming fast. Oh my God. Mid-March. It's upon us. Lockdown. For me, just more of the same. I sit for hours in my chair, my leg elevated. I watch the rain clouds form in the sky as they race on by. Time stands still. Time goes fast. Morning coffee. The New York Times. I'll call my sister, call a friend, call another. Cuomo. Netflix, Amazon Prime. Food, more food. Wine, another glass. Pourquoi pas? C'est du vin français, bien sûr. 2 close friends get sick. Recoil. The days pass. The air becomes cleaner, clearer, less pollution. All of a sudden, animals show up in my backyard. Coyote, deer, bear, raccoons. Amidst the silence, nature wakes up. The knee finally heals. Oh my God, I can walk. My car, where are my keys? But no place to go. Ah, the grocery store. But don't forget the mask. I hobble in. Empty shelves. No tofu, no kimchi. This is Woodstock after all. I race out. Fear. Did it get me? Will it kill me? Kill my husband? I sense danger everywhere. The soft morning light. Wake up. What day is it? Truly, does it even really matter? Long afternoons, quiet nights. The weather does not cooperate. Snow, sleet, wind, rain. Where is spring? Hey, let's go for a drive. Country roads, no traffic. So quiet. Where is everyone? Around and around we drive, waiting for real life to begin again.
It was Saturday, March 21st, when I returned to New York from Alaska, where I thought about staying during the shutdown. My flights that day were the first time I wore a mask. I was afraid to touch any surface. I was on high alert. I was one of only a few that day who wore a mask. The home I came home to had only been partially inhabited by my husband for 2 months. I had made an attempt at leaving, a trial separation that only I knew about at first. He knew I wasn't here, but he didn't know that I was trying to leave, to decide if this was it. I was away for most of the first quarter of the new year. In fact, I decamped from our Vermont condo on New Year's Eve for a friend's house in DC. That friend was supportive of my leaving for good. I stayed a few days before retreating further afield to stay with a friend in Seattle. That friend supported me leaving as well. Finally, I had to return to New York only briefly in order to pack for a long trip to Alaska, the final withdrawal. For how long? I wasn't sure. Maybe forever. I deluded myself. It wouldn't be. In Alaska, the news was on at my dad and stepmother's house almost 24 hours a day. We watched as the news ratcheted up day by day, the numbers of cases, the dire symptoms, the lack of ventilators, the lack of PPE. Then one day, my stepmother said to me tearfully, "You need to go home. You need to go to your home. Your home is with your husband." 35 years ago, a runaway. Now I was getting kicked out. March 21, I arrive at JFK. To an uncertain marriage and the hottest hotspot on the planet for COVID-19. What would it be like? For me, not much different than what my life had been like prior to the pandemic. I have been in a rut for a long, long, long time. I fight to keep myself from settling into a corner on the couch in the living room. Here I sit with my knees pulled up to my chest, laptop on a TV tray and a cup of coffee. I watch 30 Rock, The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt on Netflix, and Veep on HBO over and over. I rage tweet. I rage against the injustices I see happening to men and women who are mistreated by the police. I sign petitions online. Before the pandemic, I might have gone to a few 12-step meetings in my neighborhood every week. Had lunch with the curmudgeons in the group, the crusty old timers who like to talk shit about everyone and everything, my people. Now, I sit in on Zoom meetings with strangers and talk about higher power and humility. I share my experience, strength, and hope from a world that is on hold. Where do I practice the principles of my program now? Not on Twitter, I can tell you that. That's negative spirituality. The virtual life is not cutting it. It's like the Matrix. Am I really here? Does it matter what I do? Do I need to shower? Did I mention that I keep a bullet journal, even though I never leave the house? It's to keep track of things like taking my meds and tracking my caloric intake. In theory, it's to keep me sane and from becoming morbidly obese from overeating and a sedentary lifestyle. It's also to keep track of my activity. Those lines don't get checked off so much. I had to add a few lines to give myself a few gimmies so I'd have a win every week. I thought calling my mom would be one of those. It was not. I talk to her about once a week. I'm surprised that she doesn't call me more often. I know she's anxious as well, but I think she senses my anxiety and depression and knows she's not able to help, so she helpfully avoids me. I should be looking for a job. There are a lot of lines in my bullet journal about job searching activities, going on LinkedIn, writing cover letters, sending emails to network, calling to follow up on all of the above. Those check boxes are emptier than the bathroom tissue aisle at Target at the end of March. I don't go grocery shopping anymore. I live off of stale items in the pantry and wilted vegetables in the crisper. When things get very dire, I do what feels like a hit and run at the Key Food. I don't even take a list. It's smash and grab. I go in, masked, gloved, I grab lettuce, broccoli, yogurt, some sort of protein, and I get the F out. Oh, I also always get avocados because I'm supposedly on keto. Then I return home where I sit, I browse, I graze, and I age. It's been 5 months. Am I back? Or am I just under lockdown?
On Friday, January 24th, I was sitting in the apartment. Nothing special or new happening. Suddenly, a friend request arrives. A name from my past, my junior prom. Then the fling at the ranch, circa 1969. Vibrational memories ensue. A deep crush, a crushing crush back then. I accept the request. Now I have a flicker of renewal in this space of cool boredom. Known, wanting to get out of 40 plus years in the city, you know. Not known at the precipice of a pre-pandemic era unfolding behind the mirrors of a 21st century tale. Late February, we continued to banter back and forth for 30 days and 30 nights. Late, a potential visit is planned. Our lives could hardly be any more different. 6 children to none in almost as many decades. Just the tip of the unknown, I must say. But I'm up for it. Tremors of a bad virus are more than felt and threaten us all. I want the buzz of my 20s to keep buzzing and the flights of creative energy to grow. Late evening, March 11th, I arrive in Rhinebeck. Exhale and go to bed. First thing the next morning, everything stops. Director emails emphatically, do not come back. You are on remote until further notice. The visit planning goes on hold, but not my preoccupation. So this exercise of solitude takes hold, going so well, and then it doesn't. What is this new reality I'm in? The inescapable retreat. So peaceful and beautiful everywhere my eyes land. However, it's this reconnection, a past pregnant within me, that prods and sends me to a dear, tender time of my life, full of expansive potential. I describe it to myself as the umbilicus of breath, aspiration, and passion that for some reason got severed. How did I begin to reflect on this, my life past? Each and every decade of youth, of goals reached and not reached, and trips into disappointment. These remembrances flow more and more tenderly, above and beneath the places I'd forgotten, because they held no joy. Days turn into weeks, plowing earth with tears. I cannot escape the call of this young woman. I want to know why I shun and shunned opening my heart to love. And so I allow my voices to arise and reintroduce themselves so that I can feel and feast on them. In time, I send them off down the path where there is no land, not Never Never Land.
Thank you, Carol. And thanks to all the women who wrote these fabulous stories and shared them across the world. Please consider donating to the Homeless Coalition of New York City. Your donation will go to train homeless women so they can learn job skills that will lift them out of poverty. To donate, go to the email invitation you received and click on the donate link, or you can go to voicetheater.org and then click on support us. Your donation will help homeless women. Be safe, wear a mask, and for those of you in the USA, if you're planning to vote by mail, find out early what your state requires. Mail in your ballot early. And if you have to use a stamp, put 2 stamps on the envelope. 1 woman, 1 vote. Thanks for spending the evening with us. See you next time.